This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, full-time observer, joined by Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. We haven't been on in 2 weeks, Jack. There's a lot going on in the sports world, especially the boxing world. How are you tonight? You look lively in that shirt, so I know you're feeling better.
I was sick for a little bit. I'm in great form now, going to the gym, working out, getting in shape. Sometimes I wonder during the year, do I work out harder than some of the fighters who take these long layoffs between fights?
That's Jack.
So you laid off between fights when you fought. You hardly did anything unless you had a fight coming up.
Jack, when I was an amateur, I was the ultimate gym rat, and they actually had to kick me out of the gym. I couldn't spar enough. I couldn't run far enough. You know, Jack, one day, gospel truth, one day in Frazier's gym, I skipped rope for 1 hour and a half and didn't miss one beat.
Guinness
back in 78, 79.
Guinness Book of World Records.
That's how long I didn't miss one time. You know how many guys I watched train and spar that day? I just said, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. Let me try to keep the weight down. There's nothing like youth. I don't think I could skip 3 minutes now without something hurting or pulling something.
I'm impressed.
All right, Jack, where you want to go? There was
take a gulp of your drink until we're well into the show. That shows we're working. That's like the fighter getting instructions from the referee and him taking a swig of water and spitting it into the bucket. Come on, Frank.
Speaking of which, that was something I deprived myself of too. See, youth is wasted on the young. I didn't believe in drinking.
Okay. Let's get the football out of your system very quickly, Frank, so we could get to boxing, because I know you're dying to vent about the NFL. So let's get it done with quick. Okay. Well, what's the complaint about? Your Dolphins are done, and just like you predicted. Okay, who do you pick?
The Dolphins are done, and Jack, think about this. Think of the bullets I dodged the last couple of years. Ohio State and the Eagles were both on the verge of winning championships, and they're the two teams I root against the most. I didn't see either team collapsing, especially the Eagles. I've enjoyed these playoffs now that they're out. I never had hopes for the Dolphins. My Super Bowl pick before the season started was Chiefs-Eagles rematch. Obviously, the Eagles can't hold up their end of the deal, and I have to tell you this, Jack. I hope the Chiefs don't either. I'm not a Baltimore Ravens fan, but I am so tired of Patrick Mahomes and the Mahomes commercials. I'm tired of the Chiefs and Taylor Swift and the Kelsey brothers. I hope the Ravens mutilate the Chiefs, but I'm not sure that's going to happen.
We shall see. But for what it's worth, I'm picking the Lions and the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl to win next week.
I'm going to pick the Niners, and I guess I'm going to pick the Chiefs. If you think about it, the Chiefs didn't. The only good winning teams they beat all year were the Dolphins twice, but you have to give them credit. They beat the Bills yesterday, but once again, wide right comes back to haunt the Bills.
The New Year's underway now with boxing. Now, what is the biggest story? Are we forging into this year with something really big? I think we're starting this year, and the big fight is supposed to be Fury and Usyk. But how come there's a certain calmness? Like we're wondering, is it actually going to take place?
I think that's the calmest, Jack.
Yeah,
I think because of the Saudis, because they made the fight with Joshua and Ngannou, and they pulled off Ngannou and Fury, and I just think the money is speaking, and I have no doubt that Fury and Usyk are going to meet on February 17th, Jack. Number one, because it's big money, and number two, because of Fury. What happened to Fury versus Ngannou put him in a situation now where he lost a lot of the cachet he had as far as being the man, perhaps one of the all-time greats. And I think that's going to motivate him, and that's going to be instrumental in why I will pick him to beat Usyk, because I think he realizes his career and the perception of his career is riding on this fight with Usyk.
But we were joking around early in the show, and I was joking, saying you didn't do much between fights. Fury, we get the feeling, really hasn't done much between fights. No. And he hasn't been very active. And when you're an older fighter, that's when you lose it. You usually lose it between fights. If you're in training camp all the time and maybe only take a week off and you're constantly training, you're going to maintain your skills, into an old age, into the mid-40s in reality. But these layoffs between fights and then trying to get back in shape, you kind of...
And he balloons up in weight, too.
And he balloons up in weight, and it's going to take its toll. I mean, you take someone who's a gym rat like a LeBron James, for example, constantly working out, taking care of his body year-round. In the off season, he doesn't slack off. He has these personal trainers. He's working as hard as ever. And even though he might not be the best player in the NBA anymore, he's one of the best.
He's in the top five without a doubt.
High level of his skill. And a Tyson Fury, I'm sure, doesn't show even a fraction of that dedication. On the other hand, you take an Alexander Usyk, you get the feeling, even in war-torn Ukraine, he does his share of working out between fights. Maybe not with the same intensity. I'm sure not with the same intensity.
Yeah, you can't bring that every day.
Camp, right. But I'm sure he keeps busy. He just does enough. In other words, when an Alexander Usyk first gets to training camp, let's say it's a 10, 11 week camp or whatever, he's getting there in shape. Maybe not in fight shape, but in good fit.
He's honing his skill.
Hard. He's ready to start working hard. And you said it best, Frank. He's there. He could start honing his skills immediately. A Tyson Fury, it's going to take him weeks just to get in shape to push hard.
Like Riddick Bowe and James Toney. Their training camp was all about reducing and getting their weight down. That was the number one concern that they had going in. Can I get the weight down? Got to get the weight off. Got to get the weight off. They weren't really strategizing. Tony relied on his skill, and to a big extent, so did Riddick Bowe. But Jack, here's a question for you. And I was thinking about this. Francis Ngannou made $10 million, between $10 and $12 million for fighting Tyson Fury. He's reportedly going to get between 20 and 23 against Anthony Joshua. So that'll mean inside a calendar year, he will have made almost $35 million. We saw what the $100 million payday did to Conor McGregor. Never went back in the ring and is 1-3 in MMA since the Mayweather debacle. Is it the fact that the guys at the very top, Canelo's, although he's a rare exception, but the guys at the top make so much money that they just don't feel the hunger to fight? You realize when Ken Norton fought Muhammad Ali, his biggest paycheck was $8,000. And the fight before Ali, he made $300. Then he fights Ali and he makes $50,000. And yes, in 1973, $50,000 was a lot of money. But it's not like Norton could have laid on the beach the rest of his life and taken it easy, where these guys, Fury, Joshua, Wilder, we're talking millions and millions and millions, generational wealth. I have to think that definitely affects them, and it makes them lazy and less hungry.
Yeah, in the case of Nagano, keep in mind he was probably underpaid during all his MMA career. So
I
now
think he had 20 MMA fights, and that didn't total what he made fighting Fury.
So he, in a certain sense, you can't begrudge him getting what he's getting.
I'm not at all.
The way he earned it through the MMA here, you also get the feeling with Nagano, he's not going to cash out like McGregor. Of course, McGregor wanted to beat Mayweather, but you also, and you look, if I lose, I'm getting a fortune of money. And you get the feeling with McGregor, he was laughing his way to the bank, that he wasn't devastated about losing to Mayweather.
No.
You get the feeling with Nagano, he really enjoys boxing. He really wants to win. He really thinks he's going to win.
He's already calling out Deontay Wilder.
Well, I don't know why anyone's calling Deontay Wilder's a shot fighter, basically. You can see in the Joseph Parker fight, I don't even think Wilder has the big punch anymore to bail him out, but that's another issue. If you want to give Wilder the benefit of the doubt, he had an off night, but look how inactive Wilder's been. I mean, but it's the brand. That's what makes boxing a dysfunctional sport. You can lose a fight badly. You can retire a couple of years, not win a meaningful fight for years, fight maybe 2 easy fights in 4 years, and the fighters feel a sense of entitlement. I'll give you an example. Keith Thurman, for example. Keith Thurman can beat the most mediocre of opponent in his next fight just to get a W, and now he could start calling out the big names, and he'll have the attention of the big names, and promoters are going to look at him as an alternate opponent for pay-per-view show because Thurman has a name.
Right.
It's like a gold card that lasts forever. We see that with Andy Ruiz. He stops Joshua, has his one big moment, and that's a gold card. He expects to cash in millions and millions and millions, and he'll win a fight once in a while in the interim to keep his name out there until he gets another big fight, millions again, loses that fight, and still might come back for more. It's like, Frank, have you ever been to a party where a guy had a big plate of food at the buffet line, and then he's rushing ahead of people for second helpings for second plate?
I know those guys. They're in my family.
I think Max produces a little that way too. But
Jack, think about this, though. And I agree with what you said. Think of the 2 biggest names in boxing right now as far as draw, not who the best fighter is. Canelo and Joshua. Okay? They probably take more ridicule than anybody. And I could probably be on part with both of that because I've ripped Joshua some and Canelo. But at least they do keep the game alive. I mean, I get on Joshua, but Joshua fights, and he still, to this day, has the best resume of any of the other heavyweights as far as who he's been in with. And the same thing with Canelo. Canelo picks his spots here and there, but at least they fight. And we never hear about them not being in shape. I know Joshua's a workout guy. I don't think Canelo lets himself go either. But at least, no, they're not perfect and they have warts, but at least they fight. How many other guys can we say that about? I love Terrence Crawford. I think he's the best fighter in the game since 2017. I don't like the once a year, and it might catch him.
Can you imagine if Terrence Crawford over the years would have had multiple fights? He would have said, look, I want to fight 4 times a year in a seasonal basis. Some of the paydays I know are going to be a bit lower than the others, but I love boxing. I want to fight 4 times a year. Excellent chance he'd still be unbeaten, and he would be up to something like about 60 fights, and we would be
non-title fights like Emil Griffith and Rodriguez and Dick Tiger.
And we would be talking about Terrence Crawford as arguably being maybe the greatest fighter of all time, but it was never. These guys want a legacy, but they don't want to really pay the price. But in fairness to them, the business has changed. We could talk
exactly
about the old timers. If Sugar Ray Robinson were around today, he'd be fighting only twice a year. Let's be honest about it. I mean,
if Harry Greb was around today, Jack, he wouldn't fight 45 times in a year.
Yeah. I mean, and the guys today, if they were fighting in the past, they'd be fighting a lot more. It's the nature of the business. It's not the competitors. But back to Canelo. This is Canelo's blueprint. I don't approve of it, but in a way, I'm going to give him a pass. And I'm going to tell you why. He's planning to fight reportedly Jamal Charlo next. Jamal Charlo is one of those gold card guys. What, one fight in 3 years or something?
But he's undefeated.
He's unbeaten. And 3 years ago, he was considered an elite fighter, right? An elite talent. And then he disappeared. That would have, at one point, that would have been a very hot fight, very risky for Canelo. It's still risky to an extent. Don't get me wrong. He's not a lock to win the fight, even though he should be able to. So he fights Jamal Charlo, who's unbeaten. He follows that up and fights Jaime Munguia.
If Munguia wins Saturday night
against John Wright, and Munguia is kind of mediocre at times. It's not a lock that he's going to win. He'll probably win, but it's far from a certainty. Let's say Munguia
we're both going to pick him, though.
Right. Let's say Munguia wins. So he beats Charlo. He beats Munguia. Canelo sits down against Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch in the court of law. The jury rules in favor of Canelo not being a cherry picker because he could say, that's 3 unbeaten fighters in a row that I've beaten. I've beaten the Charlo brothers unbeaten. I've beaten Munguia. Who's unbeaten. And then you point out, and this is why I give him a little bit of a pass, believe it or not. Everyone says, oh, fight David Benavidez. Fight David Benavidez. Fine, we want to see that fight. I know how badly you want to see it. You posted things. But consider this with Benavidez. I'm not going to give him any sympathy. In the meantime, okay, Canelo is avoiding Benavidez. We both know that. But in the meantime, let Benavidez step up with his big mouth, take on David Morrell, take on Artur Beterbiev, because Benavidez said, I want to fight Dimitri Bivol. Well, if you're willing to fight Dimitri Bivol, fight Artur Beterbiev, because Beterbiev would accept your challenge. He would gladly accept it and probably beat you.
But Jack, you're talking about a world that used to exist. That world doesn't exist. Canelo is the cash cow, and Benavidez knows he gets not only the most money for that fight, but if he wins it, he knows people will be talking about him more the next day than if he beats David Morrell, even if he beat Beterbiev, which would be a much better win than beating Canelo. But he knows if he beats Beterbiev, Beterbiev is not a household name like Canelo is. So I can see why he thinks he deserves that shot. And you can make a case that he actually does. The way I look at it with Canelo is, Jack, he's worth $300 million. He has generational wealth, okay? Look at Deontay Wilder. He lost 2 out of 3 to Tyson Fury, but the way he went out in that last fight against Fury, nobody held the loss against him. So Canelo, if he fights Benavidez and beats him, he'll shut up the haters. He'll get paid a lot of money. He'll enhance his legacy. And if he loses a decision, is anybody really going to say, oh, he was never that good and he finally fought somebody good and he lost? No, he would go out if he chose to with his health, his wealth, and his respect. So I just think there comes a time that when you have all the other things behind you that an elite fighter could want, take the challenge and give the fans the fighters they want. But after saying all that, Jack, we both know it's a business, and that's why it won't happen. What you said is going to happen, Charlo and Munguia.
Yeah, certain fighters on a consistent basis fight the best opponents available. So they're allowed to breathe once in a while. I can understand Anthony Joshua coming off the 2 fights with Usyk. He didn't have to fight Usyk the first time. He could have swerved him. He didn't have to have the rematch. He could have pulled a Canelo, taken a couple of tune-ups, this and that, and gotten around to Usyk at another time. But he immediately went into the rematch. So I was okay with Jermaine Franklin, that comeback fight. That was fine. And then he had the other fight with Helenius, okay. And Otto Wallen, he was back in with a contender. And now Nagano. But I don't want to hear the talk after being basically unimpressive the last couple of years, even though he would have his moments. I don't want to hear that Joshua's back. He proved he's a top heavyweight in the world because of the way he beat Wallen. Very good performance, but I'm not a believer you can have a few so-so fights in a row, and then you look great one fight, and everyone's going crazy about you. But Joshua,
Jack, and I don't like the Nagano fight for Joshua. I've said that all along. I do not like that fight. I don't think he's getting 50 million, so I can see why he's taking the fight, and he probably thinks it's an easy fight. I don't like that fight. I have a bad feeling. I've read some of the things that Nagano says. I hope Joshua has his A game, and I hope he can hurt him.
Saying that could influence you, Frank.
He's saying, I know the guy doesn't have a chin, and I'm going to test it. And that tells me his mindset that he's going in there as the alpha. And I don't like Joshua when he's in there with a guy that's an alpha who's as big as him, as strong as him, and maybe even hits as hard or harder.
I thought Fury would beat Nagano easily. I'm thinking in terms Joshua's going to do the job in very decisive fashion because Nagano doesn't punch fast. He punches slow, clubbing. Joshua doesn't have to get hit by him at all if he just boxes him from the outside. He doesn't have, Joshua could outpoint him comfortably if he hurts Nagano at any point.
So you're saying he's going to fight him like he did Andy Ruiz in a rematch?
For the most part, maybe not as much lateral movement, but he'll find the way he did Jermaine Franklin. Just keep it from long range, pile up points, win round after round. Because keep this in mind, as long as Joshua gets the W, he could play the comparison game Nagano against Fury. Let's say it's a close fight. Joshua ekes out a split decision. He could say, this guy is a terrific fighter. Look at the trouble he gave Tyson Fury. Or if he does better than Fury, as I expect, he can point to that. So no one can be too critical of Joshua. Unlike Fury, if Fury fought Nagano after Nagano fought Joshua, and let's say Nagano fought a close fight with Joshua, we wouldn't be as critical of Tyson Fury now. We'd say that Nagano is a heck of a fighter.
I just need Anthony Joshua, Jack, to separate himself against a guy that's had one fight in the ring. I don't think he has. I think if he knocks him out in the first round, he doesn't gain that much. People will say, well, Fury just took him so light. That's why it went the way it did. He's knocking out a novice. And if he struggles, gets knocked down, or God forbid he loses, I just think all he's gained over the years is gone. It almost ruined Fury. And I could see the same thing happening with Joshua. I said the Nagano fight was going to go to distance. Fury would win and not be impressive. And I'm not sure I'm that confident.
I think Zhang would be a serious threat against Joshua to knock him out.
Absolutely.
He's going to be able to reach Joshua at times, and Zhang isn't going to be knocked out quickly himself. He's going to be around. At some point, he is going to land right hands. Okay, but that's why Joshua would never fight him. I mean, if Joshua has to, he'll try to get a third fight at least with Usyk, because he knows he could be competitive in that, and then maybe even win the third time. But what I think would be next for Joshua, assuming he wins this fight, and I know you're feeling we shouldn't go under that assumption, would be Daniel Dubois, an all-England fight, a massive fight in England, very winnable fight for Joshua against Dubois. A fight he could still lose, though. Hey, my buddy Jason Gonzalez is in El Salvador. I heard he was going there. I mean,
hey, Jason
should let us know, if there's any boxing activity there. Yeah,
Jack.
Jason writes for the Louisville Courier-Journal, by the way. Good.
Yeah, oh, really?
One of my close buddies, yeah.
Okay, nice. Jack, let's transition. We've covered the heavyweights. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the Fury-Usyk fight and Joshua Nagano. But a couple of weeks ago, a fighter in the light heavyweight division named Artur Beterbiev scored his 20th win, scored his 20th knockout. I believe he scored his 8th or 9th consecutive title defense. He's getting a lot of attention. I will admit to you, I may have underestimated him a little bit. He was very impressive in this fight. He supposedly lives like a monk, doesn't go out. He's typical old school. I've seen some of the tapes on him, Jack, some of the conditioning he does. He has a lot of people in his ear as far as a lot of things he does for strength training and tendon training and bone hardening that martial artists do. And the only reason why I know that, Jack, is because I've done some of that and I've been exposed to that world. He never stops walking it down. He's physically strong. Arm punches don't hold him off. His punches numb you. They demoralize you as the fight progresses. And believe it or not, Jack, if you look at him, he looks like he's an easy guy to strategize against, even though on paper it seems what you could do to beat him would be pretty obvious, but not in actuality. And I also like the fact that he is one of the rare attackers who can step back, lure you to come to him, and counter you and hit you clean. Not many. Golovkin couldn't do that. Not many attackers do that. And I'm willing to say at this point, I would favor Beterbiev over Bivol. And I'm almost at the point, Jack, where I think you could drop Beterbiev in with the 1985 guy, the 80s guys, Quallick, Johnson, Spink, Saad, Eddie Mustafa, that crew. I think he'd compete.
Oh yeah, he'll definitely compete and maybe even beat all those guys. I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't, but Beterbiev is a tremendous puncher, but the pressure he puts on, the way he breaks someone down. Bivol, I have no doubt Bivol could maybe outbox him for a few rounds.
Win rounds, absolutely.
But eventually, Beterbiev knows he'd have to pressure Bivol the whole time. He'd be coming after him. But when he'd catch up with them in moments, I mean, sledgehammer blows would be landing. And to keep Beterbiev off for full 12 rounds, I mean, that's going to be a heck of a chore for Bivol. And if Bivol should last the 12 rounds, I'm sure, Beterbiev would win enough rounds to win a decision. But my feeling is he would stop Bivol in about 9 rounds or so. Bivol would do fine for 4 or 5 rounds. Then it would start really turning.
He's one of those guys, Jack, that he's heavy-handed. He carries his power. The only thing I might disagree with what you said is, and I probably would have said it until I saw the Callum Smith fight, is you would think that Beterbiev is the guy that has to pressure the whole time. But he showed in that fight that he can step back and counter and I could see him bringing Bivol to him and actually landing on Bivol on the way in, which really does make him dangerous. But the physical and mental pressure he puts on, I don't think we can explain it clearly and cohesively enough that people understand just how taxing that is, because you could just see with Callum Smith, he was going 100-mile-an-hour just trying to stay with Beterbiev, who was going 40 or 50. And once he cranked it up to 70 or 80, it was a matter of time. The only thing I'll say, and I don't like bringing this up, but you said he could beat all the guys from the 80s.
No, he might be able to beat. I was thinking of that, Frank. I'm sorry to cut in. Dwight Muhammad Qawi might beat Beterbiev because Qawi could take a great punch. Qawi would be hard to hit. He'd be on Beterbiev's
and he can punch, and Beterbiev's been down twice.
I give Qawi an excellent chance, okay? But I'm confident of this. He does knock Matthew Saad Muhammad out style-wise. He does knock him out. But Qawi maybe beats Beterbiev.
You think he knocks Saad out? Let me ask you this.
Yeah, Saad doesn't. He was Miracle Matt. You know how many times...
Jack, let me ask you this. Name one guy that Beterbiev fought that you would give a 30% chance to beat Saad. You're going to pick Callum Smith to beat Saad?
No. I mean, Saad would have beaten the guys that Beterbiev beat.
And he probably have all knockouts too.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to look at the past fights, the record there, but
I'm not sure Beterbiev
yeah.
beats Saad, but I'm not sure Saad beats him either. So I've adjusted, but I would probably pick Saad.
Yeah, I would doubt it style-wise, but
Jack, Saad could crack with both hands. We've seen Beterbiev hurt.
Saad would come back from the brink and win fights. Keep that in mind. And against Beterbiev, once he's on the brink, Beterbiev finishes him. He doesn't get a chance to come back from being on the brink. So Saad's ticket to beating Beterbiev would be not to get hurt during the fight. If Beterbiev didn't hurt him, yeah, Saad could win the fight, absolutely. Maybe even stop.
Who do you think's the harder puncher?
Beterbiev.
I disagree. I think Saad's more explosive with both hands, but Beterbiev puts more pressure on you, and his pressure can wear you down. I'll just say this. I'm at least comfortable with having the conversation that it's a debate, and I'm not sure who would win. I didn't feel that way before. I feel that way now, and I don't want to take anything away from Beterbiev because
Michael Spinks to beat Beterbiev.
Okay, Jack, but we're talking about one of the top 3 all-time great light heavyweights.
Yeah, I'm not heading the Beterbiev fan club. I would pick Khawi to beat him. I would pick Spinks to beat him, but I'd pick Beterbiev to beat Mustafa Muhammad and Matthew Saad Muhammad.
Mustafa Muhammad might be the one guy that he could really get to because Eddie didn't like to fight a full round, and if he could take if Beterbiev could handle his power going in, he would wear Eddie down. I could see that.
Knock out Bob Forster. You know, it may have very well happened if Forster didn't deliver the KO punch. He could outbox Beterbiev for a while, but he wouldn't have the durability to stand up to Beterbiev for long. So that's an intriguing fight. I mean,
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Beterbiev, I think, would beat everybody that Foster beat at light heavyweight.
Yeah, well, but you could say it the other way around for the most part, too.
Yes. Sure. I mean, I'd like to see that fight, but I mean, Beterbiev has been on the deck, Jack. We have seen him hurt.
Yeah.
So, but the guy, look, and they're talking about him in the pound for pound rating. I'm not big on that, but look, with the quality of opposition he's fought in his division, he has to be in the top 10. Keeping him out now is a joke, or you don't know what you're looking at because he's more than just an attacker. He has a plan when he goes in there, and we saw he even did this against Joe Smith, where he hurt Joe Smith when Beterbiev had his back against the ropes.
But just think,
a lot of attackers can't do that.
Joe Smith, before he fought Beterbiev, he was on a nice run. After he fought Beterbiev, I forgot. Joe Smith came back, lost a hard-fought decision against the guy Bivol beat. What's his name again? I forgot. Zurdo Ramirez. Okay. So Joe Smith wasn't a faded force. Beterbiev utterly destroyed him. It was the big. This is the 51st anniversary day. Frank Foreman Frazier, but Beterbiev over Smith was a much bigger wipeout than that.
Yes. You can tell Beterbiev is the real deal. And this was the case against Joe Smith, a little less against Callum Smith, but the first time Beterbiev hits guys clean, the way they can react, you realize that's legit, and that power and strength and his heavy hands that are hard. Some people don't realize, Jack, that they talk about guys that have big hands. That doesn't necessarily always equate to punching power. The hardness of the bones in your hands. That's why if you take a roll of dimes and you put them in your fist, how much harder could you hit with a roll of dimes in your fist? It's like brass knuckles, right? Now think about this, Jack. A roll of dimes does not weigh that much, but what does it do when you put it in your palm and wrap your fist around it? It makes your hand like a steel mallet, not a rubber mallet. It makes it hard like a sledgehammer. And when they talk about guys that have sledgehammer punches, a guy like Beef comes to mind because his hands are heavy and they're hard. And when they land, nothing gives. And that's why the power's there. And that's when they break things.
Frank, I just want to detour a little bit too, because we basically talked about Better Beef. Earlier today, I spoke to Don King because I want to do a story on Don King, but Don, we talked a little bit, not for the story, to try to set up an appointment. And King is at age 92. He's a bit elusive. He just had some type of, I think, dental surgery. So that was confirmed by someone who I knew. But I looked up his net worth just for the heck of it, for the story, because I came across it. It said 150 million. I can believe that. I don't know whether it's accurate. And I don't know why it showed up on my screen, Joe Frazier's net worth. And it was at the time he passed away. I don't know, is this accurate? It said $100,000, which makes me think of this, if that it's accurate or not accurate. When you'd maybe know, being a Philadelphian, when Frazier turned pro, it was under Group Cloverly. Supposedly, they were supposed to help him out, get financial security, this and that. What happens to a group like that who's supposed to, a syndicate and the whole bit, stockholders? What the heck happened?
I think they had it. I think his deal was where he got $100,000 a year for the rest of his life. But when you're spending money and you have as many kids as he had, and a couple other things going on, and some failed businesses, and a lawsuit over like 300 acres of land, the money goes. And think about it, Jack. How much do you think Joe Frazier made in his career? You think he made 15 million?
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine about one of my boyhood idols, Jimmy Ellis, who wound up in not a good financial situation, put it that way, late on. And I'm thinking, but the money he made in those fights, and then I was told, well, that he didn't really make much money. I know in the WBA tournament, he got 50,000 first fight, 75,000.
And 125 for the final.
Then he had a nice payday against Patterson, then close to 400,000 against Frazier. Obviously, paying his handlers and this and taxes. Of all those fights, he maybe made only about a third of those. But I remember talking to Jerry Quarry, and he says, yeah, my first house cost me $29,000. So that should put it in perspective. So those paydays could have been invested or whatever. They multiply. No one made big money that time compared to now.
Jack, I remember it was 1970. I live in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Muhammad Ali just bought his house in Cherry Hill. It was in the Jersey papers at that time. And I think it was $125,000. And I remember my dad, who actually did well himself, was just marveling at that money and how much that house was. And I remember when he moved in, Jack, because his house, Ali's house, was like a palace, and like it used to be like they'd have to have a cop out there directing traffic because everybody would be riding by looking at the house, and I rode my bike out there a million times. Now that house is probably one of the smaller houses on the block, and I think it's worth maybe $3 million. And it's just crazy how things change, and we just can't see the number and the economy, the way things change. And remember, Jack, you know this as well as I do. Remember how upset people were at the price that Ali and Frazier were getting, the $2.5 million guarantee? Back then, I remember thinking, wow, these guys are set. They never have to do anything again. And if neither one of them would have ever fought after that, they would have been broke in 5 years.
Yeah, but I was just wondering with the Frazier thing, 51st anniversary.
I know Joe wasn't in good shape financially when he died. He had a lot of health issues. He had a big family, and the money went as fast as it came in.
Yeah, yes. Oh, certain iconic fighters, okay? They'll always be able to make money. Like a Mike Tyson could wind up completely broke. He's never going to come close to recovering the money that he could have had, that he made and could have had. But someone like a Mike Tyson can do public appearances and make a couple of million a year. And if he's smart, hold on to
Probably
that
more
money.
than that.
Oh, more than that, probably, but live off 300,000 a year for argument's sake, and keep saving the rest, invested, accumulated, and he can still be a wealthy guy. Okay, but sometimes,
Jack, but we know this much. The athletes don't look at it like that. They think it's going to come in forever. Or sometimes I get a little annoyed when people talk about the fighters, but how many NFL guys end up bankrupt and NBA guys that end up bankrupt? It's like they just don't realize, they don't have a plan afterwards. They don't adjust their lifestyle. They buy everything. And it's just, I guess when you come up with nothing, like Tyson said, and then you can buy anything, you don't know how to handle it.
Oh, I want to talk about a fight, Frank, I saw this week. I don't want to let it go. Natasha Jonas against Michaela Mayer for the women's IBF welterweight title. 10-round title fight, as all women's title fights are. And a reasonably close fight. I had Mayer winning 96-94, was in England, Jonas's, hometown. Something funny or sad happened before the fight. Let's call you could laugh about how dumb it sounded to me, but I didn't like it in the beginning. They're playing the American national anthem, and some of the British fans are booing it, okay? Never mind that the UK is an ally of the United States, so they're booing the American national anthem. Then they play it for the defending champion Jonas, their anthem in England. They're booing even louder, their own country. That was the part that I was cracking up. I went from mad about the American anthem. How could these idiots show disrespect? It's a foreign thing. I would never boo a foreign national anthem of that athlete. I just wouldn't want to do it. But especially if the countries are allies for whatever reason, but they're booing their own anthem louder.
They don't care today, Jack.
Like, what am I hearing here?
Yeah, I didn't see that. I heard the fight was really good. I saw somebody wrote about the anthem, and I don't like that at all. I would never do that.
Maya got one vote, 96-94, the way I had it. Jonas got a 96-94 vote and a 96-95 vote. Was it a robbery? No, I didn't like the decision. I thought Maya won. You could accept Jonas getting the decision, but she didn't really win the fight. I mean, if you gave it a draw, that would have been being a little hard on Maya, but it would have came into the category as acceptable. I mean, the victory for Jonas, I'll label it a little distasteful. That's all. I can't get hype about it because you can make an argument, that it was a close fight. And it was a reasonably close fight, but you could tell Maya had an edge. But it's what it is,
But you said it was an exciting fight. Everything I read said it was a real good fight.
Timmy Bradley was kind of irking me a little with his commentary.
Did he invent any new punches?
Well, and Amanda Serrano, who's a lovely person, a fine fighter, I'm a little annoyed with their 3-minute round stand. She wants to take the stand for equal rights. I could tell you with these women title fights, you make it 3 rounds, Frank, the quality of the fight isn't going to be as good because they're going to pace themselves much more. Okay? And Maya, Jonas, they knew that 20 minutes of fighting, so you fight harder. Okay? As opposed to if you had 12 rounds, 36 minutes of fighting. I'll tell you what I wouldn't mind the women doing, and this would be a great thing to do, because they fight 20 minutes as opposed to 36. How about this, Frank, a compromise? Instead of 10 2-minute rounds, 15 2-minute rounds. That's intriguing. Fight lasts longer. You're back to the 15 rounds. I wouldn't mind that for the men. Instead of 12 3-minute rounds, let the men fight 15 2-minute rounds.
No, I don't cut the rounds down, Jack. No. I want 15 3-minute rounds, but we'll never get that back in my lifetime.
What about 18 2-minute rounds? You'll have the same 36 minutes.
No, because
pack it
sometimes
all
guys
in
can
and
run
get
for
it.
2 minutes. That favors the boxer, Jack. That favors the boxer a lot. That last minute is when the pressure guys, the better bees, get to you and beat you up. I think that puts the boxer at an advantage. No, well, I want at least 3-minute rounds. I was going to ask you something. I forget what it was. Something you were talking about. Oh,
It had to be Smoking Joe.
no, not about that. It'll come to me.
Well,
It'll come to me.
The fight Saturday night, just a quick review. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Jaime Munguia against John Ryder. John Ryder.
Neither one have fought in almost a year. It's been a while.
John
Ryder,
Ryder
what, May and
actually-
Munguia, June?
John Ryder got on the big stage in a way. I mean, he beat Zach Parker, but then he got a disputed decision over Danny Jacobs. Now, I thought Jacobs won the fight, but in all fairness to Ryder, he came on in the late rounds and Jacobs faded. I don't have much sympathy, Frank. If I have a fight ahead on points, but he had a big lead and he fades badly, and then it tightens up, and I only have him 1 or 2 points ahead at the end, I don't have much sympathy for him. I'm not going to say, oh, I think he won the fight. What a bad decision, and so on. I don't. So Ryder got the decision over Jacobs, even though I scored for Jacobs, and he fought Canelo. Canelo beat him big, but Canelo
Dropped him once, right, in the 5th round?
Yeah, but the point is Ryder did go the distance. So that, I guess, makes him marketable. Now he fights Munguia. You better believe Canelo is hoping Munguia wins so he could be on his radar. Okay? Because he's an unbeaten fighter. He's a Mexican. I could see that maybe Mexican, Independence Day, if not Charlo. So Canelo's 2 fights, as we said.
So, Jack, think about what you just said. Think about what you just said. And I agree with it. Canelo is hoping that Munguia wins. The boxing establishment also knows that, and they know that's the fight. That nobody wants to see John Ryder fight Canelo. So right off the bat, what do we know? We know that unless Ryder stops Munguia or beats him half to death, he's not getting the decision. So he has to win by knockout. I don't see that happening. So I could never pick against Munguia in this fight, knowing that a big fight with Canelo is out there, and all he has to do is survive this fight.
Yeah.
That's the business of boxing.
Yeah, but I don't think the judges go into the fight with that notion, but they understand sometimes who's the A side and who's the B side. So any toss-up round, they're usually going to give to the favorite, the house fighter. Toss-up round. I think if Ryder legitimately wins rounds, he's going to get it from the judges. That would be my thought. But,
Jack, you have no idea how much it compliments me when I say something and you retort back and you basically say what I say in a different way. And that's what you did with Munguia. It's in the judge's head, Jack, and they know.
It is.
They know it's better for business. Munguia undefeated. They can sell him as a puncher. And if he happens to stop Ryder, that's something Canelo couldn't do.
Canelo, but this isn't Canelo. The judges are going to favor Canelo because he's gotten to that point. And Munguia.
But they may work the next fight. It's better for the sport. And as you said, they have the notion of that. Nobody's going to care about John Ryder. The fight now is Canelo and Munguia. Sure, they can fall back on Charlo if Munguia loses, but that just tells me, this is what it tells me, that Munguia, unless he's beat to death, he is going to have his hand raised. And even if it's a bad decision, everybody will sit there and say, oh, boxing is this, that, and the other. It's fixed. But guess what? When Munguia signs to fight Canelo and they had the press conference, Once they had that, the fact that he won a disputed decision over Ryder, and that's how it goes, nobody will care. They will all buy the Canelo fight in May. And this establishment knows that.
Yeah, I'm looking for something here that I want to read to you. Okay? Wait 1 second. Oh boy. Do I have it here? I'm sorry about this. 1 second. It has to do with Lomachenko and George Kambosos, about them possibly fighting. I'm trying to get this hooked up here, Frank. 1 second.
Well, as you're doing that, I'll talk, and I'll tell you this much. Kambosos is the perfect fighter for Lomachenko to fight at this time. Lomachenko will win that fight. It will not be any controversy. He will outbox, outthink, and outfight George Kambosos every step of the way. He'll win 10 rounds to 2.
Yeah, because I had wrote, here goes. This is what I want to read, okay? I covered a show for Boxing News. They had to do with the Kambosos Maxi Hughes fight. And this is what irks me, Kambosos getting the fight against Lomachenko. This was in this past summer, okay? Just a quick review. The fight was in Oklahoma. Maxi Hughes clearly beat George Kambosos, but Kambosos was given the decision. Lousy decision. Let me just read this for a few minutes, if you don't mind. Is it okay? Go. Okay. This is my report, exactly how it came out in Boxing News. George Kambosos was given a majority 12-round decision over Maxi Hughes in their fight at the Firelike Arena, but did not win the fight. If Hughes was not outright robbed, then he was certainly pickpocketed in a scenario we have now become all too accustomed to. It has now gotten to the point where it is not enough to just vent about bad decisions, but to do something about them. Writing about a fight in reports such as this, complaining about them on podcasts, railing about them on social media won't bring change. We need something more. Boxing News, recognizing the injustice, was a trendsetter when it gave Jack Catterall recognition in its yearly awards, despite him coming out on the short end of the decision in his fight against Josh Taylor. And in moving forward, it would now be the correct thing to do to place Hughes above Kambosos in the world ratings as well. What we really need, though, are all of the players with true clout to step up and follow suit. Then and only then will we see fewer atrocities occurring. Let's start with ESPN, who broadcast the fight. Analysts Tim Bradley and Mark Kriegel were baffled by the decision. Kriegel had Hughes up 117-111, which was wider than the Boxing News score of 116-112. Judge David Sutherland's 114-114 was unfair. Gerald Ritter's 115-113 for Kambosos was terrible, but the 117-111 tally in favor of the Australian by Joseph Mason was unforgivable. Oklahoma rarely hosts a show of this magnitude. Doubtless they would like more, but if ESPN announced they would not be back to that location to telecast the show again in the foreseeable future due to the travesty of this decision, it would make state officials all over take notice and hold judges a lot more accountable than they currently are. But listen to this, Frank, but when things calm down, look for ESPN to continue business as usual. It's a safe bet that Kambosos will again adorn their airwaves before Hughes does. After all, Kambosos' name value makes a fight against Vasily Lomachenko or a rematch with Teofimo Lopez more appealing than if Hughes were to face either of the two. This type of attitude makes ESPN a large part of the problem that their commentators are always complaining about. As for Top Rank, who promoted the show, or any other promotional entity in a similar scenario, they tend to dissuade themselves from even discussing an outrageous decision unless it goes against their business interests. That certainly seemed to be the case here, being that they recently signed Kambosos and have plans for him. Top Rank were probably relieved he was given the decision as just as it was. I'm going to read one more paragraph. Those making a case for Kambosos will use the old line that the scoring of a fight is subjective. They will also point to him being the one moving forward most of the time, claiming he was the aggressor, as ineffective as it actually was. Then we hear about there being many close rounds which could have been scored either way. And if that is not enough, they will point to the questionable CompuBox numbers, which were relatively close. At the end of the day, though, all those claims are rubbish as it pertains to this fight. The man from Doncaster won it plain and simple, rarely getting hit and exhibiting superb ring generalship, which befuddled Kambosos for much of the match. Okay, so that's my complaint. Kambosos is in with Lomachenko. Poor Maxi Hughes. He's given who? Jose Cepeda, one of the top lightweights, who's probably going to beat Maxi Hughes in their next fight.
Jack, what you just said was eloquently stated. But it's been the case in this sport for as long as this sport has been, and that's why the sport suffers, because there's no oversight, there's no regulation. It's run like the OK Corral, and all we can do is what you did. You pointed it out, but again, when a fighter has a name, Kambosos has a name. Everybody forgot about Maxi Hughes, so what are they going to do? They're going to tune in to watch Lomachenko.
Lotierzo, what are you going to do now that I read this and I reminded you of the gift decision, Kambosos, the unfair decision? I'm
still going to watch the fight when he fights Lomachenko, Jack.
Lomachenko and Kambosos, you're going to pay your darn money. Poor Maxi Hughes could be out in the cold. Don't get the fight. The heck with it. George Kambosos was beaten by Maxi Hughes and he was given a gift.
Jack, what is one of my favorite sayings about this sport that I've said to you, I've said to Russell Peltz, I've said to Jerry Cooney, and everybody else we talk to about this sport who holds an opinion that we value? The people that care about this sport and want to see it improved, you and I, don't have the power. The people that have the power to make a difference, a real difference, don't want to. And as long as those two things are in play, it's never, ever going to change. The people that care about it and want to change it don't have the power. The people that have the power to change it don't want to, because they're benefiting by it being the way that it is.
Let me, before the show ends, okay, I want to make a note. I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the show. A close friend of mine in the boxing business passed away last week after long illness. Bob Duffy.
I didn't know him.
He was a president of Ring 8. He was a president of the New York State Boxing Hall of Fame. I'm going to be taking over as president of New York State Boxing Hall of Fame. I'm going to have big shoes to fill. I mean, Duffy was phenomenal.
Well, congratulations on that, Jack.
I'm doing it by default, basically, you know, in that sense. I mean, but Bob Duffy was involved, you know, on the New York State Athletic Commission. He brought a lot of integrity, you know, to the commission during the years he was on that commission. And, you know, was so involved with boxing, especially in the New York scene, helping out in a lot of ways. And, you know, close friend of mine, you know, he'll be missed by a lot of people. He made a big impact in the sport. He is in the New York State Boxing Hall of Fame, but he just you know, an impactful individual in a positive way for this sport.
Well, may he rest in peace, Jack. And let's talk about something else real quick that also passed away, and that is the demise of Sports Illustrated. I used to love getting Sports Illustrated, Jack, when it had a cover of the fight or a fighter on the cover, regardless of what was in the magazine. I tried to collect every one that had a fighter on the cover. At one time, they used to do a terrific job covering boxing, but that died about 30 years ago, and now the magazine is apparently also.
It looks like it's done, you know, pretty much, but it deserves a little more time, I think, with Sports Illustrated, us talking a little bit about the history.
It was there for 70 years.
Yeah, but we have very little time, but I guess that issue when Ali was dropped by Frazier, end of the Ali legend, they were ready to write him off after the first Frazier fight.
It should have said the beginning of the Ali legend.
History didn't play out that way. But okay, till next week, Frank. It was a lot of fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, Jack. Nice seeing you. Good show.